The following is a paid advertisement. The views expressed are the sole responsibility of the advertiser.
Put the power back in your hands. This is Behind the Law with attorney Justin Clark.
Welcome to Behind the Law. I am your host, attorney Justin Clark, joined as always by the beautiful Michaela Nichols. Hello, Michaela. How are you?
Good.
It's your second time now hosting this show, or co-hosting, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't really matter. Do you feel like you're a lawyer all of a sudden? I mean, do you feel lawyerly today?
I do. It's like Esquire, right? Is that what you say?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So you're learning
Michaela
already.
Nichols, Esquire.
I believe last week your first question was, what is family law, if I'm not mistaken.
So it was something like that, honestly.
You've come a long way. But you're going to learn a lot more today, because we're going to talk about two very important areas of the law, questions that we get all the time. Number one is criminal defense. Richard Hornsby, a great criminal defense attorney, will be here to talk all things criminal defense. Do you need to hire someone for a criminal defense case? Do you hire the public defender? What is the difference in those two things? DUI. What are things you can do when you get a DUI? Blow or not blow? It's a question that we get all of the time. You've heard that question before, right?
I have.
To blow or not to blow,
that
is the question.
Like that.
You're not? Thank
Never,
goodness.
thank God.
No, you don't ever want to be in that situation. Also, what we're going to talk about in the second part of the show today is bankruptcy. We've obviously been through a pandemic. A lot of people have taken out a lot of credit card debt. A lot of people have lost their jobs, but it's a weird time because, believe it or not, over the last really year and a half or 2 years, bankruptcies are at an all-time low, which is a little bit shocking considering we're in a pandemic, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense.
When is the right time to file for bankruptcy? When's the right time to try to settle your debt? When's the right time to just pay everything off? Wayne Spivak, a fantastic bankruptcy lawyer that we know, will be here to answer those as well. Show number 2 from Michaela Nichols. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Here's what we're gonna do. Quick break, 30-second break. We never lied to you, I promise you. It'll be 30 seconds. When we get right back here, Richard Hornsby, criminal defense attorney, will join us as Behind the Law continues. Having debt can leave you feeling helpless. I'm attorney Justin Clark. Filing for bankruptcy may give you the power to lower or even eliminate the payments that have you living paycheck to paycheck. Call me now for a free consultation or visit youhavepower.com and take back control of your life. Does student loan debt have you spinning out of control? You are not helpless. At Attorneys Justin Clark and Associates, our goal is to lower or even eliminate your monthly payments. Call me today or visit youhavepower.com and take back control of your financial life. Welcome back to the show. You were pulled over by the police. They ask you to blow. They say they might smell alcohol. What do you do in that situation? You get a call from a detective asking questions about something. You don't even know what they're talking about. Do you talk to them? Or do you hire a lawyer? Lastly, a lot of people are hiring public defenders right now. I guess it's not even really hiring. It's you use the public defender's office to defend you when charged with a crime. Should you do those things or should you not? Who better to ask than our good friend Richard Hornsby, great criminal defense attorney. Richard, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me.
First thing I noticed, and I think maybe a lot of people at home don't understand what this means and how powerful it is in Florida. You're a board-certified criminal defense attorney. What does that mean?
It means I rank in the top 5% of criminal defense lawyers in Florida. We have to take a test. We have to have conducted a certain number of trials. We have to be active in the practice of law. It's not only something that you earn, but it's something you have to maintain every 5 years. So it's a very important distinction. It helps separate the best lawyers from average lawyers.
Yeah. So the public defender's office, obviously, you got to respect what they're doing over there. I mean, tons of cases they have, and sometimes when you have so many cases, they can be a little bit unmanageable. I mean, what do you say to someone who's charged with a crime? Do we go with the public defender or do we hire a private criminal defense attorney?
You know, I always tell people, if you can afford to hire your own attorney, you absolutely should. There's no reason that you should not hire an attorney if you have the means and ability. The real question comes to when people, they have to decide, do I take my life savings and do I put it towards this defense attorney, or do I go with the public defender's office and possibly save that money? The reality, though, is many times, while most public defenders are pretty good lawyers, they are overworked, they're overburdened, and a lot of them aren't experienced, especially now where there's a high turnover rate in the public defender's office throughout the state. So you have to think of how important is your potential freedom or the potential ramifications you may get if you are convicted. And 9 times out of 10, going with a private attorney, if you can afford one, or even using your savings to hire that private attorney is going to be the better option.
And to be very clear to all you public defenders out there, I am not bashing you. Richard's not bashing you. We appreciate the work that you're doing out there. I mean, we really do. And I think they understand that if someone has a lot more money, they probably should hire private. In fact, Michaela, you have a friend that I believe works in the public defender's office, right?
I do.
What
yes.
stories do you hear?
A lot. She can't obviously say much, but I hear that her days are very overworked.
Yeah. And I'm a former public defender.
Yeah.
I worked there for 5 years. I was actually the first public defender or assistant public defender hired by the currently elected public defender Bob Wesley here in Orlando. So I'm very sympathetic to him, but I think if you even speak to most public defenders, they'll tell you if you can hire an attorney, you're going to have more resources and you're going to get more, I guess, boutique representation if you go with a private lawyer.
Yeah. We've watched Datelines, we've watched all of these criminal shows, and we see someone who's not necessarily charged with a crime, but you see the detective calling up and saying, hey, can you come down to the station and meet with us? When do I know it's time to hire a lawyer and not talk?
Frankly, whenever the police call you for just about anything, you should get their name, their phone number, and if they have some type of case number, or if they can, ask some basic questions, what is this about? Get as much information you can. You should say, let me talk to my lawyer and I will call you back. And then if you actually know a lawyer, you should call that person. If you don't know someone, you should get on Google, find one, and get some direction from that lawyer. I can't tell you how many times I've had people call me after the fact if they've already talked to the detective, and because they provided information that if they hadn't provided it to the detective, they wouldn't have gotten charged with a crime, because they, a lot of times the detective is looking for that last piece of evidence to put a case together, and many times people unwittingly give it because they talk to detectives without first getting speaking to an attorney. So frankly, no matter even if you think you've done nothing wrong, immediately say, let me get your name and number. I'll speak to a lawyer and I'll get back with you. And if there's nothing there, a lot of times an attorney can pick up the phone and find out whether or not you actually need a lawyer, or if it's something that, hey, you should let me do the talking for you.
Do they sometimes make it seem like you're not even under investigation? They're trying to treat you like a witness? I mean, they can kind of lull you to sleep a little bit to get you to talk, I guess, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. The police are allowed to lie to you outright. They can make bold-faced lies. They can make tiny lies. They can completely, a lot of times they might not even be suspecting you as committing a crime, but you provide them information that leads them down that rabbit hole. And so that's why you've always got to be on your guard, especially, not if they're calling about you, but if they're calling about your children. That's a big red flag, because a lot of times, kids get in problems at school, there's marijuana, there's vape, there's all these different things going on, there's text messaging, and you think that you're doing the right thing, or that, I was cooperating with the police and they're going to take it easy, man. The truth is, the police tell you they're going to take it easy on you, or they'll make things easy for you if you cooperate, or if you provide them with this information. But at the end of the day, they write the reports and they file the charges, and they move on to their next case. They're just telling you this information because they want to make their jobs easier. So always, no matter what, get some information, pick up the phone and talk to a lawyer.
So I don't have to talk to the police at all?
No, absolutely. If the police just call you up and they say, hey, we've got a few questions for you, you should always be polite and respectful to the police. They're people like us. They got their own issues, and they're dealing with a lot of, sometimes rude or discourteous people. But you should say, can I get your name and number? Tell me what this is about. I'm going to call my lawyer. And if you don't actually know a lawyer, it doesn't matter. You can lie to them too. You can say, I'm going to call my lawyer. And then call me or call anybody and say, what should I do here? And and I can't tell you how many times I'll pick up the phone and I'll be like, hey, what is this about? And sometimes they'll tell me right off the bat because they know not to, it's easy to discern what's going on. And I'll call you back and be like, it's okay for you to talk to them. They're calling about your neighbor across the street who got in a fight, and they want to see if you saw anything. But a lot of times I'll talk to them and they'll be like, it's about your son or your brother or something. I'll be like, don't say anything. I'll do the talking. And I've saved a lot of people that way. And it's really important that people know that they don't have to talk to the police unless they have some type of warrant or something.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't know to do that or not do that, but now I know.
Yeah, well, that's why we're here. And that's why you are here, too, to learn about how to get behind the law. What actually happens when it comes to dealing with legal issues. The only difference is spending time here with us is not going to charge you. We're not going to charge you a penny. It won't cost you a thing. Let's talk DUI for a second. You must get questions about DUI all the time. We hear rumors that there's this big spike in DUI cases New Year's Eve or other holidays. How true is that?
Absolutely. The police expect people to be drinking on big holidays, on Super Bowls, and there always is a spike in DUIs. And to answer the question that everybody always asks, should I blow or not? When in doubt, don't blow. But you have to remember, when you do these, you need to say, respectfully, officer, I've been told by my lawyer I should never blow. And then don't say anything else. Try to keep your mouth shut. Yeah. You shouldn't say anything else other than if they ask you basic biographical information, because a lot of times what people do is they won't blow, but then they'll talk for 30 minutes thinking they can talk their way out of it. And the truth is, if the police suspect you of having drank and drive, they're not letting you go no matter what you say. So be polite, say, respectfully, officer, I'm not going to blow. If they ask you to do what we call field side test, where they walk the line and things like that, respectfully, officer, I'm going to decline. My lawyer told me I should never do something like that. a caveat to DUIs though is, a lot of the new DUI though is marijuana.
Oh, okay.
Driving while high. Everybody seems to have a medical marijuana card. Free piece of advice, if you ever use marijuana, even recreationally, I highly suggest you go get a medical marijuana card just to save you from the separate issue of getting charged with possession of it. But people need to know that even if you have a medical marijuana card, it doesn't allow you to smoke it in your car. It doesn't allow you to openly transport it around in your car. And what cops are doing now is that while there are less DUIs because of things like Uber and Lyft, the cops are now shifting their focus to arresting people that smell like they've been smoking marijuana.
Really?
Yeah, and while DUI while smoking marijuana is more difficult to prove, it's not more difficult to arrest you for it. All they have to do is suspect that you're using marijuana while you're driving. And so people need to be aware of that, and they need to be cautious about that, because I think that's going to be the next frontier of DUI cases, is going to be the driving while high.
How does the state prove that? Okay, so the officer smelled marijuana. You could probably say you smoked it 10 hours ago or whatever. When the state attorney actually takes that case, how do they ultimately prove that?
Well, currently in Florida, it's really hard to prove driving while under the influence of marijuana, because it's not like DUI with alcohol where it's 0.08 is a legal limit.
Right.
There's no legal limit for how much cannabis can be in your system, but there are states that are starting to pass laws where if they do a urine test and they find a certain amount of cannabis metabolite in your system, well, then you're presumptively driving under the influence. And so right now it's very difficult, but they can still do it if obviously you're swerving all over the road, or if you couldn't stand up, or if you're saying random things to the police officer on video. That's how they would try to prove it.
Yeah.
It's still difficult, but you should be aware of it until the legislature one day, which I suspect they will do, will pass some type of limit where if you have a certain amount of cannabis in your system, then you're presumptively under the influence.
Well, let's say that we get pulled over, the officer says he smells alcohol. What happens from there? Do we still do the field sobriety test right next to the car? Where do I blow? What is the process post getting pulled over?
So the answer is, unlike some attorneys always like say no to everything, my opinion is when in doubt, politely say no. But if you've literally had one glass of wine, or you've literally had one beer, and you get pulled over, the problem is that officers still will smell it no matter how little or how much you've had to drink. But if you know for a fact that you would pass that with flying colors, at least the roadside test, I say use your best judgment. But if you're like, wow, I think I've had one too many, you definitely shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure, you should always say politely, officer, I'm going to decline. I'm not going to do it.
Do we blow on the side of the road? It seems kind of unsafe to me. Or do they take us to a facility to blow? How does that work?
So most of the jurisdictions in Central Florida actually take you to a breath testing facility. And obviously if they're taking you to a breath testing facility, you're already under arrest. You're already going to be charged with DUI.
Yeah.
There's no reason that you should add to the evidence that's going to be used against you by willingly blowing into the machine.
Isn't there like a blood test or something?
There is a blood test, and theoretically they could go get a warrant to try to do a blood draw, but generally in Florida they will only seek a blood draw if there's been an injury or a death involved in an accident.
So they can get a warrant though and take your blood, and you can't say no at that point.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
You can't say no, and actually there's some states like Texas actually has what they call warrant check stops now, where they'll stop you for a DUI, and if you don't, they automatically have a judge on call that'll grant the warrant.
Really?
And they'll do it. We haven't gotten there yet in Florida, and let's hope we don't, but that's something that could happen.
What is the importance of your relationship as a criminal defense attorney with the state attorneys that you are dealing with, the state attorney that's actually prosecuting the case? How important is your relationship to that state attorney?
Relationships with not only the prosecutors but also the judges. And when I say relationships, I mean knowing the judges, knowing the prosecutors is extremely important, because you know what to expect, you know what their limits are, you know how they're doing it. I get calls from attorneys, not from attorneys, but from clients that are out of county, say Pasco County, Jacksonville County, saying, well, I want an out-of-town attorney. That attorney is going to really fight for me. And really what happens is, if an out-of-town attorney comes into town, they tend to mess things up because they don't understand what the judges, ideas are, what the prosecutor is likely to do. And the other thing is, when you have a relationship with a prosecutor, they trust you. So if you say this is what the facts will be, or this is what the evidence will be, they believe you, especially if they've had many cases with you. Yeah. Same thing with judges. When sometimes you can't work out an agreement with a prosecutor and you don't want to go to trial, so you plead to the bench. The judge, a judge that knows you, a judge that respects you, a judge that knows that you're not being frivolous in your arguments is more likely to give your client a better resolution than a judge hearing from some attorney they've never seen before. They don't know them, and they don't know the quality of their work product.
Completely agree. If you have any criminal questions whatsoever, a family member charged with a crime, I'm going to give you a phone number right now to call. I will connect you with Richard immediately. Here's the phone number, 321-282-1055. Richard Hornsby, board-certified criminal defense attorney. Thanks for coming on, brother. That was
Thank
really
you.
good stuff.
Appreciate it.
Flew by.
Thank you.
Michaela, did you learn some things?
I did. It was
Good.
very helpful.
Here's what we're going to do. Take a very quick break. When we return, we're going to talk about bankruptcy. When do you know it's time to pull the trigger and file for bankruptcy? Behind the Law continues. I'm attorney Justin Clark. Call me now for a free consultation or visit youhavepower.com and take back control of your life. And welcome back from DUI to bankruptcy. Now, bankruptcy is something we know quite a bit about, and we see families who are going through very difficult financial times. And, sometimes bankruptcy has a bad connotation to it, but we've seen it change lives. Look, you make decent money. You just have all of this debt that's been chasing you around for years, and by the end of the month, you literally have no money left. When is bankruptcy the right move for you? When is bankruptcy the right move for your family? We're here to ask Wayne Spivak, one of the best bankruptcy lawyers in town. Wayne, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Justin.
And so bankruptcy does have a bad word to it. Sometimes people are even judgmental about someone who decides to file bankruptcy. I mean, you see it in your office all the time. Change lives. How can bankruptcy help me?
I've seen a lot of people come into the office and say, I can't believe I'm in this position, that I have to do this. I reassure people, nobody grows up thinking, I look forward to filing bankruptcy someday. But sometimes it's something you've got to embrace when you have no other options. When you're not able to keep up with the credit card debt, when you're behind on the mortgage, the time to deal with it is sooner rather than later. Don't wait until people start suing you and you get judgments and your paycheck's getting garnished. Come to see us before that happens so we can get you set up.
Talk about credit rating, because one of the biggest challenges to people filing bankruptcy is they say, it's going to ruin my credit. What does bankruptcy really do to my credit rating?
Well, no guarantees, but for the most part, what we see is that people are improving their credit score by filing bankruptcy. They're getting rid of a lot of the junk debt that's dragging it down. I've seen a lot of people come out of bankruptcy a year or so later, and their credit score has improved dramatically. I've seen people, when their bankruptcy are over, be able to obtain new lines of credit, new car loan, apply for a mortgage after a couple of years. It can actually really improve. And by the time you file bankruptcy, if you're behind on payments, if you're behind on that mortgage, filing bankruptcy is only going to help. It's not going to make it worse.
And then also think about the debt-to-income ratio. A lot of people's credit scores being deflated due to their debt-to-income ratio. How does bankruptcy affect that debt-to-income ratio?
Once you file bankruptcy and you get rid of the credit cards, the collections, the medical bills, it can actually improve your debt-to-income ratio significantly, because then you don't have that on your credit anymore.
What kind of stress relief have you seen when a client's come in and talk to you? Talk to me about the day that you meet them and the stress on their face versus the day that they walk out of that office with that bankruptcy discharge. What kind of stress reliever is that?
Huge stress reliever. You can see it on people's faces. People come in, they're under strain. They're not sleeping. They don't know what to do. By the time I'm done with their bankruptcy case, they breathe a sigh of relief. They know they can move on without the harassing calls, without the negative credit reporting, and they have a plan for the future.
You know, Wayne, I feel like I need to file bankruptcy. I'm up all night, I'm stressed out, but I can't file bankruptcy because I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to lose my car. What do you say?
In Florida, we have the Homestead Protection. Everyone knows the Homestead Protection. The bankruptcy court, the bankruptcy trustee cannot make you sell your house if you claim it as your homestead. You'll never lose it. And for the car, we can keep the car, keep making the payments on it. The bankruptcy trustee will not take your car if, well, number one, they won't take it if you're upside down on the payments, and most everybody is.
Yeah.
If you have equity in the car, that's why you come and see a bankruptcy attorney like me to go through the process so that you're able to keep the car and get out with a fresh start.
I think for most consumers, they have to decide between a Chapter 7 versus a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. It can be very confusing, this Chapter 7, Chapter 13.
It's super confusing. I don't know what either of those mean.
And we're about to tell you.
That's why you come to see me.
Yeah. So what is the difference, for Michaela's sake, the difference between a Chapter 7 and Chapter 13?
Well, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, this is the traditional bankruptcy a lot of people think of. It's over with in 4 months. You walk away from all of your credit card debt, medical bills right away. So within 4 months, you get an order of discharge, and it's all gone. It's a great tool. You have to be below certain income requirements to do this, and we have to make sure that you don't have significant assets that could have been used to pay your creditors first. But you know, it's a fantastic tool if you're under those income limits and you have less than a certain amount of assets. Now, Chapter 13 is a payment plan bankruptcy. You propose a payment plan to catch up on certain bills. A lot of tools in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You can force your mortgage company to start taking your mortgage payments again if you're behind and they stop taking them. You can force the mortgage company to take a catch-up payment. You can take up to 5 years to catch up on the mortgage payments that you got behind on. You can restructure your car loans where you propose a new payment plan for your car loans, stretch it to a new 5-year term, lower the interest rate. The going interest rate today in bankruptcy for a car loan is 5.5%.
Wow.
So if you have an 18% car loan and you got 4 or 5 years left to go on it, we can rearrange that in a Chapter 13 payment plan. If you have assets that a bankruptcy trustee would normally take and sell off in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you don't do that in Chapter 13. You just make a payment plan to pay your creditors a sufficient amount of money over up to 5 years to keep those assets. So again, payment plan, for some people, it's a bad idea. They don't want to be stuck in a payment plan for 5 years. But if you need help with the mortgage, with the cars, with keeping your assets, it can be a very powerful tool.
I've seen it. I've seen it be such a powerful tool for families. And while we're at it, I was doing a story about this on the Florida Man Radio Network on our radio show yesterday. 3 out of 5 of you stay up at night and are waking up in the middle of the night multiple times worried about what? You guessed it. You're worried about finances. You're not alone in this thing. Trust me. Many of us have gone through financial issues. Many of us are going through financial issues. There's no reason why you would not call Wayne. If you're feeling stressed out about your financial problems, he's never going to charge you to come in the office. I'm going to put up a phone number on the screen right now, 321-282-1055. You can meet with Wayne to talk about whatever financial stressors that you may have. So we did 7, talked about 13. Briefly touch on a Chapter 11 because some people, I believe, may use that personally, but that's more business, isn't it?
Well, a Chapter 11 bankruptcy is intended for a business reorganization. It's like a Chapter 13 where you come up with a payment plan, but again, it's intended for a business. The requirements are much more onerous. You have some other tools not available to you in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Also, in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you have to be below certain debt limits. I think the debt limits were recently increased to, I think, 1.4 million in secured debt like mortgages and close to 400 some thousand in credit cards. If you're significantly above those limits, a Chapter 13 might work. An individual Chapter 11 might be the way to go. Certainly if you're a business trying to reorganize your debts, a Chapter 11 would be the way to go. But again, come and talk to me. We'll go over it and we'll see what your best options are.
One of the biggest misconceptions that I see is, well, I can file bankruptcy, but I know it won't wipe out any IRS debt. That's not true, is it? Can't a bankruptcy help you with your IRS problems?
No, IRS debt is dischargeable under certain circumstances. IRS debt that's over 3 years from when your return should have been filed can be generally dischargeable. We have discharged a lot of IRS debt, and if it's not dischargeable, if your tax debt is from less than 3 years ago, then we can do a Chapter 13 plan. A Chapter 13 payment plan would allow you to pay back the IRS. They will file a claim saying exactly what's owed. You'll pay it back with some certainty that when you're done, you're finished with the IRS. And during that 5-year payment plan, the IRS will not bother you outside of the bankruptcy. They won't garnish your bank accounts. They won't try to levy your paycheck. You'll just pay it off in the plan that we create so you have some certainty as to what you need to do.
I have all the debt in my household. My wife has no debt. It's a question you hear a lot. But do we have to file together, or can I file without my wife involved?
It's not a requirement to file jointly as spouses. If one spouse does not need the benefit of bankruptcy protection, we don't need to file a joint bankruptcy. It can be one or the other.
How many times do I have to go to court throughout this entire bankruptcy process?
Well, you have to go at least once for a meeting with the bankruptcy trustee, but I'm at that meeting with you. After that, it's generally not required for you to show up to any court hearings. I attend all those on your behalf.
Wow. I mean, it's not the most heavy lifting when it comes to a legal process, and pretty darn quick too, isn't it?
It is, and again, I take you through it. I make sure you understand everything that's going on, and what I tell people is that you're paying me to take on the emotional burden. You're paying me so you don't have to worry about this anymore.
Wayne Spivak, excellent job, bankruptcy lawyer to the stars. You're doing a great job, kind of God's work. I've seen you change lives, so keep up the good work, buddy.
Thanks, man.
All right, here's what we're gonna do. Quick break, one last one. When we come back, Michaela and I will wrap this all up. Behind the Law continues. I'm here with Stephen Bader, the COO of IQ Power Solar. Steve, as you know, I went solar at my house with IQ Power Solar. Thank goodness that I did. There are a lot of door-knocking companies out there. There are a lot of these sales organizations that pretend to do solar. They are not IQ Power Solar. What separates you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an exciting industry and a lot of people are getting into it, and that's a good thing, right? For the most part. No one says, oh, I want to just put as many panels on the roof. That's not a good investment. We understand home energy, we understand how to get the best return on your investment, and we understand that at the end of the day, you're not buying a solar system. No one says, I can't wait to get up and look at my system. You're buying an outcome, so that's what we focus on. We focus on an outcome, a promise, someone hold accountable for that promise, and you know, a 40-year commitment to it. So that's what we do.
Really what made us switch to solar was our electric bill was insane. It was $600–700 a month. What made me choose IQ Power was I had a bunch of people obviously come knock on my door, and I just went through and did some research on it. I liked that they were all under one contract. It wasn't multiple contractors. Everything was handled through the same individual, and they knocked everything out in a timely manner and really worked it out for us. They had the best warranties and guarantees in the business, and my wife really liked that. They were fantastic to work with.
Thank you for what you did for me and my family, Steve. IQ Power Solar. Do yourself a favor, give IQ Power Solar a call today. You will not regret that decision.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we wrap it up today, as always, with what did I learn today? Michaela, what did you learn?
Well, Justin, I learned a lot. I learned to not blow and not do the field sobriety test if I'm ever in a situation. Knock on wood, I won't be. But yeah, I learned that. That was very helpful.
I think I learned that if a detective or officer calls you for anything, you politely say, look, I trust you. I appreciate what you're doing. Can you give me a case number? Can you tell me what this is about? And then you call your lawyer. If you don't have a lawyer, Richard Hornsby is perfect, or go to google.com. You can find plenty of lawyers right there. What about bankruptcy? What did you learn about bankruptcy?
I learned that I never want to be in that situation. I can't imagine the emotional toll that people go through dealing with that.
What I learned about bankruptcy, clearly to me, is that bankruptcy can help your credit. Everyone thinks bankruptcy is going to ruin your credit.
Just a scary word.
Bankruptcy helps your credit. Think about all the debt you wipe off. Your credit actually oftentimes will improve by filing bankruptcy. Excellent job. This is show number 2 for you. I think 10 years for me. Are you feeling more comfortable asking questions to lawyers?
Yeah, I mean, I might take your job eventually. Who knows?
Please do, by all means. Are you going to do it again next week?
I think so.
All right. Thank you so much to our crew here, and thank you for joining us every Saturday for Behind the Law. We'll see you this time next week for more Behind the Law.
The proceeding was a paid advertisement. The views expressed were the sole responsibility of the advertiser.